Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Zubair and I'm a fourth year computing student. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to study effectively. The first step is to stay completely engaged with your work and try not to do anything else whilst you are studying. Studies show that for the vast majority of people, multitasking isn't the most effective way to approach a task. There's a link to one such study in the description. In terms of practical advice to stay focused, try and find a workspace where there are no distractions. If you get distracted by your phone, then remove your phone. If you get distracted by your friends, then try and find a workspace away from your friends. And if you find it difficult to stay focused, here's a technique that might help. It's called the Pomodoro technique. So the technique works as follows. Firstly, you set a timer for an allocated amount of time, say 25 minutes. You study for that time, and once the timer ends, you take a break for an allocated amount of time, maybe 5 minutes. And then you go back to working, you reset the timer, and you start again. Speaking of breaks, it's important that you take breaks when you're studying. For most people, after studying for extended periods of time, their concentration starts to take a dramatic fall. The time frame varies from person to person, but it is important that you notice when you start to lose focus. For example, you start rereading lines in a textbook, you don't register new information. And at that point, it is important that you take a break that rejuvenates you and relaxes you. An example could be taking a walk outside for a breath of fresh air, speaking to your friends, or maybe even going to an ice hockey event. So another reason why you should take regular breaks is the concept of diffused thinking. So what exactly is diffused thinking? You know those times when you're in the shower and a thought pops into your head and you come up with a solution to a problem that you faced earlier on in the day? That is exactly what diffused thinking is. Your brain subconsciously solving and processing problems that you have seen before. So how does this apply to your studies? Imagine you're doing a problem sheet and you're stuck on a particular problem. Sometimes the best thing to do in this situation is to take a break, distract yourself, and let your brain implement diffused thinking. And a lot of the time, you find that when you return back to the problem, you have some new insight or even a solution to the problem. For the next part of this video, I'll be sharing some study techniques with you, inshallah. The first of these techniques is spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is the idea that you review content over extended periods of time. This is better than cramming because it is more time efficient and it aids longer term retention. The idea of spaced repetition is easier to apply to situations where you have to memorize a lot of content. You review the content, you wait a few days, you review the content again. But this idea also applies when you are learning skills. For example, if you're a computer scientist and you're learning how to program, then you rarely ever review the syntax after the first time you learn it. But you're still applying spaced repetition because when you're programming, you're reviewing the syntax by definition. So the second technique I'll be sharing with you guys is active studying. Active studying is when you engage more deeply with the material. It is better than its counterpart, passive studying. Examples of passive studying are mindlessly reading the textbook or copying down what a lecturer says verbatim. The best forms of active studying are ones that test you, ones that force you to recall information and use it. Here are some examples of active studying techniques that you can use. One way to study actively is to do problem sheets for a lecture set after you have reviewed that lecture set. This forces you to use the information that you have just learned to solve problems. Another example of active studying is using flashcards. With flashcards, you can write questions on one side and answers on the other side. And for example, when you're commuting, you can review the questions and check if you know the answers. This forces you to recall information, and there are a lot of software available to help you with this. And one such software is Anki, and Anki has spaced repetition incorporated into it. Finally, another technique for active studying is teaching others. This is arguably one of the best ways to study actively. This is because you have to completely understand the concept to communicate it to someone who doesn't know it themselves. On a final note, remember that these are just examples. Don't be disheartened if they don't work for you. Just find something that works for you and make sure it's a form of active studying. And that's the end of the video. Jazakallah for watching, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.